Well, hello and welcome to this week's episode. I want to start this episode with a question because I've been getting a lot of emails lately asking about disappointment. So here's the question. Have you ever had an experience in your life where something happened that was extremely disappointing and that you really felt like it kicked off this domino effect of a lot of other things sort of going to hell in a handbucket? Have you ever had that experience? My name is Terri Cole. I'm a licensed psychotherapist. I'm a relationship expert and the founder of Real Love Revolution and Boundary Bootcamp. So, if you nodded your head yes, that it seemed like there was a domino effect of disappointment, in this episode, I'm going to be giving you 6 steps to basically bounce back from disappointment. Sort of use that energy to learn something, but not too quick. So, let's just start with what is the first thing to do when you find yourself in this experience of being severely disappointed in something, a situation, what you thought would happen that didn't happen. What is the first thing? Now, really think about it and be honest. I find the first thing for me is I get angry. So I'm pissed. I'm angry. And a lot of times because I'm too healthy to sort of blame other people fully, but I'll be angry at myself. Like if I had done this different, it would be different. So anger is usually my first response. And I think that's a lot of people's first response, is really being pissed off about things not going the way that you want to. And part of that is because from an emotional standpoint, a lot of times it's easier to be angry than it is to be sad. So for me personally, that anger is always pretty much covering up the fact that disappointment to me is actually sadness. I had an expectation that wasn't met, right? So the first thing that you've got to do is honor the way that you feel. So if that's anger, okay. If that's sadness and crying, okay. If that's regret, okay. Whatever your feelings are, they're okay, right? We're not going to judge them. But I do believe that you got to put a time limit on that experience. There has to be a moment when you go, okay, it's time to get it together. I allowed myself to feel the way that I felt. But for me, I don't want those types of feelings and experiences to dictate who I become in my life, what happens in my life. This is a part of being a human, right, on planet Earth, is that we're disappointed. The choices we have are about what do we do when we're in that situation. Okay, so step 1 is honoring your feelings. How can you do that? You can journal about it, right? You can talk to a trusted friend. I would certainly not talk to people who are going to give you unasked for advice or criticism. I certainly would not do that. And be really clear if you do talk to someone that you're not looking for advice or criticism. I'm very specific. I had a situation happen a couple of months ago, and I knew what my mother would say because she hates when I'm upset. She hates when I'm disappointed. And so I was avoiding her for a few days around this disappointment. And finally, you can't avoid your mother forever. So I figured I would talk to her. And before I talked to her, I said, hey, I'm going to tell you something that's going on, but I don't want you to tell me that it's going to be okay because I know it will. I don't want you to give me any things I could have done to create a different outcome. Can you just listen and care that I'm struggling with something? And she was like, well, okay, you don't have to be so. I was like, oh, but I do. Because I know if I don't say that, she will, she does all her own dance, right? I mean, mothers are like that, right? They don't want us to be in pain. So a lot of times I will avoid my mother altogether when I'm in that situation because it's really hard for her to control herself. But there are friends that I choose who I know will just allow me to have the experience. Sometimes you got to have a pity party. Sometimes you got to feel sorry for yourself for a day, right? For 2 days. But you also have to move on. So step 1 is honoring your feelings. So that includes journaling, really thinking about it, meditating on how you're feeling and allowing yourself to feel what you're feeling, and perhaps talking to a trusted friend or mentor who will not judge you or give you crappy advice that you don't need. That's number 1. The second step is to be really mindful to not scapegoat. So what does that mean? That means don't get all involved in blaming So that's in step one, when you're honoring how you're feeling. And if you want to blame everyone in the world and it's all their fault about whatever it is that happened, in the end, blame doesn't help us, you know? And in the end, it's your life, just like it's my life. And we have to make decisions, right? So I'm not saying that other people can't contribute negatively to our disappointing situation, because most of the time other people do. But the reality is we're still the main, we're still the one, right? It's still our life. We still have to take responsibility for it. So you can spend a little bit of time in step one being pissed off and blaming the crap out of other people. But in step two, I'm going to ask you to be really mindful about not scapegoating, because when we scapegoat and say, well, it's Betty's fault, it's Bob's fault, it's this one's fault, if they didn't do that, then this, what we do is we're missing the opportunity that will happen eventually for us to understand or learn what it is that we need to learn. And as much as it sucks when you're in a situation where you feel really disappointed, the truth is our ability to learn, to change things, to get another skill set, to see something from a different way, that's a gift, right? That's an honor and a privilege. And think about what life is, you guys. This is all about moving, right? We are on our own evolutionary path, moving into sort of what is next for us. But that doesn't happen if we remain in the situation of saying it's always someone else's fault, because it can't be, even if they negatively contributed to your disappointment. So number two, be really mindful not to scapegoat. Number three, have compassion. Have compassion for yourself. Have compassion for others. Really be kind to yourself. And I know those of you out there who are perfectionists, it's really easy to get off on beating yourself up and being like, well, if I had done it better, this wouldn't happen. It's all me. I messed it all up. That's in step one. So if you want to go through that, whipping yourself thing, do it in step one, and there has to be a time limit. I say like 2 days max is what you get for step one. But be compassionate. If you're disappointed because of something that you did, something that you didn't do, a mistake that you made, be compassionate with yourself about that, because this is how we learn, is through our own ability to be self-compassionate. When we're beating ourselves up, we're too busy punching ourselves in the face to actually learn anything, right? So you don't want that. Compassion, which is step number 3, is really, really important. Part 4, which is taking an expectation inventory, right? This is step 4. We're looking at why was that your expectation of what would happen? So if you think back to your biggest disappointments or your most recent disappointments, were there things, right, that you could have had a more realistic expectation about something, right? What were you basing your expectation on? Was it based on denial or fantasy? Was it based on not wanting to deal with what's real, what the truth is for you? Maybe you overshot something. I've totally done that in my life and in my career and relationships. Thought that someone was more capable than they were of showing up for me. Let's just say I'm thinking about a friendship many years ago. And the truth is, if I did this expectation inventory, I would have seen that I had plenty of evidence to tell me that this friend was not a good friend and was not capable of showing up for me in the way that I wanted her to. So I agreed to basically partner with her on something, and she totally blew it. But the truth is, once I got past scapegoating her about blowing it, I realized when I was doing my own expectation inventory that that was really on me. I didn't want to see the signs because I was young and I was in my 20s, and I didn't know how to have the conversation, right? So there's many reasons why we will have faulty expectations or not well thought out expectations. So that is a really important step, which is step 4, is really doing an inventory, looking at why was that your expectation? Why? Think about it, write it down. Again, you can write this down. And then the 5th, and you guys who know my work know that I always talk about this, the truth. for all of us in life is that in almost every crappy situation, and I'll say almost because listen, you guys, the mysteries of the universe are vast, right? There is shit that happens that I will never be able to help you understand. Things that make no sense at all. Terrible things happening to wonderful people, right? So I won't say it all makes sense, but I will say that in every crap stew, there are gems for you. There are gems for your evolution, for your growth, gems of wisdom, but you have to be willing to really go in there and look for the gems. So when we whitewash a story and we say, well, this happened because that person's just a jerk, right? I could have said about that friend that I partnered with years ago who disappointed me, I could have said, well, she didn't show up. That's what that whole thing was about. It would have been a great success had she shown up. But is that true? I have no idea. And the most important piece of why that is a lie we tell ourselves and why we don't want to do that is that what good does it do me to just vilify her? Where is my learning in the crap stew? I need to go, oh, okay, but I ignored the signs that she wasn't trustworthy. Why did I do that? And that's about me. That's about me understanding myself. Oh, I did that because I didn't know how to confront her. So what is my takeaway? I need to learn how to have those harder conversations in the moment if I don't want to find myself in this situation again. So number 5 was you being willing to check out the gems in the crap stew. And the 6 is to integrate our lessons, right? We got to obviously, step 6 could also be like, keep on keeping on, right? This is what we do. It's about, falling down 7 times and getting up 8 times, right? That's like a famous saying? But it's more than that. It's, are you willing to integrate what you've learned through this process, this 6-step process around whatever the disappointment is? Are you willing to integrate it into your life? Because it's only in the integration where you go, wow, I learned that from that experience, right? That was the gem from the crap stew that I got. Now, what am I going to do with it? Am I willing to change my behavior going forward? Right? So in the example that I gave, was I willing to have the hard conversation with people, learn how to do it in therapy, which I did, and have it sooner than later? So that I didn't let my disease to please, which I had back then, get me into situations or let me get myself into situations that I ended up very disappointed with in the end. So integration is super, super important, and it really requires you being willing to do something different. Whew. So that is a lot. Don't worry, we'll have a cheat sheet for you of this. I hope that you liked this little episode on how to bounce back from disappointment, because I don't want to see it have a domino effect in your life. And you have the power to look at it kind of like a project. Like, okay, that sucked, but this is how I'm going to learn something from it. So the next time I'm in that situation, it doesn't suck. It's wonderful, right? So if you did like this episode, the best thing that you can do for me is to share it with the people in your life who you think would also like it and get some value from it. Share it on social media. In the meantime, I hope you guys have an amazing week, bouncing back and feeling great. And as always, take care of you.